Today's guest is our favorite cousin Dave, and I can't help but start with a story from the old .com days. Cousin David.
Hey, how are you doing?
Do you remember Relevant Knowledge?
No.
So, dude, when I left Silicon Graphics in 96, 97, my first startup was Relevant Knowledge. We merged with Media Metrics. We went public in 99, became Jupiter Media Metrics. Anyway, dude, my boss was Tim Cobb, and we went down to Quicken. So in 99, we're driving into Quicken. It's my potential client, and he's sitting in the passenger seat. He's like, Gabe, you know how this goes down? He's like, you're going to walk in there, ask for the money, and I got the shotgun. You know, and dude, Tim Cobb, he played on the bench at North Carolina with Michael Jordan.
Oh my God.
And I was like, the whole time I was like, dude, tell me about Michael Jordan, you know? I was like, hey, I know I'm like a, newbie sales guy, but like, just, wow, really? You played on,
Well, I mean, I always have a place for cryptocurrency because I love it, but I don't love it as much as I used to. I got kind of burned out on it back in maybe 2014, 2015. I think actually the last downturn.
I think the podcast I'm doing is going to move more towards general, with crypto as like the guiding star in general, access to technology, access to the jobs.
Why are you moving away from it?
So I took that break. Like that break became twice as long as I thought because I didn't see any formulation. I kind of one of those things where I thought I'd back up and it would just kind of like it would happen on its own. Of hey, here's the clear way to go with this, and that never happened. It still hasn't happened. It kind of like this conversation we had just now is part of that process of like really figuring out. What is the intention of this podcast? Coloring Crypto to me is bringing in an artistic perspective and an out-of-box perspective to this new technology. I'm just not necessarily moving out of it. I'm trying to be open-minded and see it for what it is and follow the path of what's the most interesting thing to talk about here.
Did I tell you this? I think it could be really interesting to like dive into the stories of like, I tried to use crypto and it sucked, or it's amazing because it solves this problem for me, or like just recording like you trying to see this person, like if I'm like in 2013 like, oh hey, it's amazing, watch, it's like fast and free, and then I go to use it and then it's like, oh, this transaction's stuck, and then you're like, okay, interlude, 3 days later after getting on tech support and threatening a lawsuit with this company, the transaction finally went through.
Holy, what complications? Let's go back. Cousin Dave, tell us from the beginning, how'd you get into this whole thing?
I got into Bitcoin in 2013, bought my first Bitcoins in July of 2013. I can't remember exactly the price, maybe $80 or $70, $90, somewhere around there. And got super excited about what Bitcoin was going to do for the world. I thought it was going to be the most empowering force since the internet, and the price skyrocketed. That December it hit maybe 1,200 or 1,300.
Yeah.
So it went from about $100 to about 1,200 or 1,300, and so it was great, right? Like I'm in this thing and it's going to change the world and it's going to be good for the world, but it's also like good for everybody involved financially. And when I go to the conferences, everybody's like excited, like it's Christmas Day because everybody's just, Bitcoin's going up, the price is, it's going crazy. And then the downturn hit. So that December, Bitcoin was at like 1,200 or 1,300, and probably by that May it was at like 550 or 600 or something like that. And the next December, it was probably at like maybe 300 or 350. And people were so gloomy. Everybody was like, it was like we were at a funeral. It went from like this big, like, party to this funeral. And I recognized that that money has a big impact on people, and I think we've seen that, throughout the years in crypto, and there's been big splits and big fights, but crypto's going strong, and still think it's gonna be the most empowering force since the internet, and it's just been, I think, hard to be in it, but I've been primarily focused elsewhere, more in startups.
Okay.
Crypto, I did try to do businesses in crypto in 2014 and 15, 2013, 2014, and 2015, startups. If any of your guests have listened to me before, they might know I'm not a fan of regulations, and I feel like that's the toughest part of crypto startups is dealing with the regulations. It's expensive. You got to get it right. It's hard. It's complicated. It's shifting. Actually, I was just talking to somebody a couple weeks ago, and some lawyers are losing their jobs, and I can't remember if they're having sanctions against them from the government, or if they're just their firms are firing them, or if the government is like revoking their law licenses because that they didn't issue the correct opinions on the ICOs. Or they were saying that those things, were not securities, advising their clients they were not securities, and then the SEC came in and said they were, and that's being a big problem. And so startups are hard, and I always use the regulations. When I got to the regulation part, I'd build these prototypes, and I'd say, oh, I don't want to deal with regulations, and I'd quit out. So maybe that was me just being a quitter, or maybe there is something to it, and it was good recognition that there was a lot of risk there, and there's not something to trifle with.
When you say quit out, what do you mean?
So like, in startups, you build a software product and you get testers on it. And so I got a few blockchain.
Hey, Dave, I just lost you. Was that me, or did you change the mic somehow?
Oh, maybe I bumped it. How's it now?
Okay, great. Back to good.
Okay. Yeah, so quit out. So I built some prototype software products back in like 2013 and 2014, and then I decided I didn't want to really try to take those to market, take those all the way, and I said it was because of regulations. But deep down it might have just been that it's hard, and I just gave up and just used that as an excuse. You know what I mean? Like when you're a kid and you're like, oh, I'm gonna be a basketball player. Well, like, are you gonna actually practice 6 hours a day for like 15 or I don't know 10 years to be a pro basketball player, or are you gonna say like, oh, I'm not tall enough, or oh, who knows what, make up some reason not to do it. And so I don't know. I could just say like, oh, the regulations were too tough, but really maybe it just could be that I wasn't tough enough to stick it out.
I get you. I totally follow you. Let's bookmark that, because I think we'll end up there as we kind of like circle around to this, because you're making me think of one of the podcasts I really love is the Kara Swisher Recode Decode one with Scott Galloway called Pivot. They were talking about what I'm thinking of is, this podcast is Coloring Crypto. We took 2 months off basically to kind of like pull back, look at the whole space, and Kara and Scott Galloway on Recode Decode were discussing how the economy, every job is a tech job or will be. When you look at the tech sector, general industry, it's all going to be tech. When we focus on this podcast on crypto, is that going to be a layer that's just in the background? That's not even the right term for it. Is it going to be distributed ledger technology, or is that even what's going on? And let's get to that. But I really am curious, because when you said that your passion sort of lessened, out of the gate in 2014, you were pretty psyched, man. Last I think maybe November, December is when you and I first did our episode 8 on this podcast. You were still pretty excited, man. You were still very positive. You were cautious, but if you were to like draw a chart of your personal interest and passion and just excitement about it, not like what you're thinking the price is going to be, but just if you were to draw a little chart from like 2013, to now, from like 0 to 100, like what would that chart look like over time?
Oh man, let's see. So when I first heard about it in 2011, it was like mildly interesting, but I didn't think it would go anywhere. And then in 2013, probably in like April was when I decided to invest, I think, because of I think it was Cypress. I think Cypress did like the bank bail-in, and Bitcoin, rocketed up, and it was on like the cover of Wall or front page of Wall Street Journal or something like that. And so then I was, really curious, and then I really fell in love with it. Probably in about, I don't know, July of 2013 through probably the end of 2014, probably maybe halfway through 2015, something like that. It was really like when the Bitcoin Cash, well, I guess at the time it wasn't Bitcoin Cash, but when the block size debate, that was like what really, in my mind, fractured the community and really took a lot of my heart out of it.
Okay, that wasn't even segued to it. That was literally the very first fork of Bitcoin, or
Well, it was just a debate, and this debate went on. It must have been from like, I think it was from 2015, until Bitcoin forked in August of 2017. So this debate started in 2014. I'm pretty sure. I don't know if it was June or December. Mike Hearn like rage quit at one point, and I was like a big fan of his. Oh, they said it was rage quitting, but I think really, he just got like, fed up with it. Because when I got into Bitcoin in 2013, or in 2011, it was like us versus like the banksters and against the regulators, and to make the world a better place, like fighting the good fight. But then the community like split, and then and instead of talking about all the great things Bitcoin was going to do, all people did, or not all people did, but when I woke up and read Reddit every day, and I was reading about people, either bashing the people who wanted small blocks or people bashing the people who wanted big blocks, and that was really draining. And I've had friends on both sides of the debate, and it doesn't feel good. I don't know, it's kind of like in a divorced family or something. Like mom and dad are splitting up, and like who do you go with? And
cousin.
Hey,
man, okay, I'm doing two things here, man. I'm literally drawing the chart of Cousin David's passion about Bitcoin. It's a very sloppy one over time. But also, I want to make sure that just for guests, for folks listening, listeners, I'm noting Mike Hearn, Rage. I'm going to ask you for links to those specific things, just so there's context around that stuff. But okay, so then we're still getting to, I've got you kind of like, July 2013 to 2014, the highest sort of peak, and then August 2017 is fork, and just a fractured family. Just that's not cool. But then that 3 months later, you and I are talking, and you're still pretty passionate about it, and the price is skyrocketing. And so, talk to me about like that to now.
Yeah. So, well, I'd be interested to re-listen to the podcast episode. I'd be interested the way I phrased it, because I'm still very bullish on the price of cryptocurrency and Bitcoin specifically, and that has never waned. And it's just, I think the case for it has just gotten stronger, from 2011 through now. So if you chart my, belief in it being successful, I've just thought it's more and more likely. And it's pretty amazing now to look back. I was at a conference in San Francisco a couple weeks ago, and it was a financial conference, and they've got, like the VP of NASDAQ, and they've got people from CNBC, and almost every session, brings up blockchain and talks about it like in a serious way, and how, they're doing this or that with it. And it's just so crazy, because, just 4 years ago, it was such a joke. That was the only way it would be brought up. You got Warren Buffett saying it's a mirage, and people laughing about it on TV, and to have it come so far in such a short time period is kind of surreal.
Well, but it's so funny. Have you seen the Hassan Minhaj Netflix show Patriot Act?
No.
He's a comedian, and it's kind of like the John Oliver sort of spirit, but he's younger, and it's actually pretty good, but he just clowned Bitcoin in it. It's very popular, and he just made fun of all his friends who were hyped on Bitcoin a year ago, and the price really is back to like to where it is. And I don't mean to like dwell on the price, but it is somewhat of a barometer, obviously, and it's kind of like this whole thing of are we looking at the wrong thing? Like I don't know if this is the right sort of segue, but like if you were talking about the startups you're getting into and that whole process, I mean, what's that relationship to cryptocurrency or blockchain, or are you like how are you viewing that?
Yeah, so I think you're, I want to touch on the barometer. I think that's exactly right, that it's the wrong thing to measure. And so when I talked about, the change from 2013 to 2014, December 2013 to December of 2014, as measured by price, Bitcoin declined similar to what we see now. It's probably like 1,200 to, I don't know, 300 or 400, something like that. But by any other measure, Bitcoin was 2x ahead, or 4x ahead where it had been, and was making like rapid progress towards the goals that everybody talked about, changing the world. And I think that same thing is true today. If you look at like where Bitcoin is today versus or blockchain, Bitcoin, I use those two terms kind of interchangeably, which is confusing to people. But when I got in, there was only Bitcoin. There was blockchain existed, but Bitcoin was the big implementation of it. But anyways,
Well, that was one of my first questions for you in episode 8 was, like why Bitcoin? Isn't it just going to be the best technology or the best algorithm of cryptocurrency, like Ethereum, that it sort of really popped into the scene a year ago? And like why? And I really didn't understand why Bitcoin wasn't going to be easily replaced. But now I'm really in the whole, worldview that it's like Kleenex, that it's like it is the thing people first buy into, and so it's just sort of there as this gold standard. And I guess I'm curious. You had talked about a year ago Ethereum being a more exciting community and a more positive space to be around.
Yep. Well, you see, you got a better memory than me. I was like, man, I hope I wasn't just like hyping Bitcoin last year like crazy, and then changing it in my memory. Yeah. I think I felt that's how I felt when I was like talking to you. I was like, oh, I probably wasn't like, I was probably like kind of excited about the price of it, but not so excited about the community. And I'm glad you remember that, because when I went to the Ethereum meetups, they were talking about Ethereum changing the world and all the cool things Ethereum's going to do, and that's how Bitcoin used to be. But I felt like it got more into like the the infighting, and I didn't enjoy that at all. And then the technology just works worse than it used to. Back in 2013 when I got in, Bitcoin was fast and free, and I'm glad that I got to experience that, because then I could see like, there's no way that cryptocurrency is not going to beat out regular currency, because it'd be like mail beating out email. Like there's just no way. And if anybody ever used email and seen the value of it, seen how it's so nice to have something that's like free and instant, then I don't see how somebody could think that old money is good money. And so I feel like fortunate that I had that experience in 2013, and I could see that it's awesome, because I feel like it's harder now when it's like, Bitcoin's slow and it's expensive, and like who knows what's going on, and all these splits and forks are confusing. And
man, I love your authenticity and just kind of like, you're a little bit kind of like, yeah, and it's perfect. I mean, we went on break for this podcast about I don't know, 2 months ago, and the last kind of like series was this 3-episode in a row series about the Great Gestation, where it kind of feels like in general the cryptocurrency community is waiting for that killer app. It's kind of like in this kind of not sure which, even the terminologies to use around things. And just to validate your own opinion, we had, it's great. We've had the whole family affair. We've had my mom on the last episode, and then we had Aunt Terry. I talked to Aunt Terry about 2 weeks ago, and she said that she said, Cousin David warned me. She's like, he warned me that the price of Bitcoin was going to go down. So here's the thing, man, is like, I don't know, like if we're to look at this whole thing, it's kind of like asking you to repeat the broken record of the big promises, and we've already got you on record saying those things, Tell me personally, just like for you, like if I look at your Facebook feed and some of the things you posted over the last couple of months, you've been meeting people that are really exciting for you to meet. Are those guys or those folks in the crypto world or in the startup world?
No, that's mostly startup world. Although pretty much everybody who's in the startup world has at least dipped into crypto and is a little bit excited about crypto.
Who's been some of
But
the
no, but
who,
they're,
who's been
they're
some of
primarily startups.
who's been some of the folks you've been most excited to meet in the last couple months?
Actually, uh, it was a big deal for me to meet Jason Calacanis.
Oh yeah, he's consistently putting out a podcast, man, and he's got strong opinions. What are you really interested in him about?
Well, I think I started listening to him back in like 2012 or 13. I was in startup land. I've been enamored with startup land since maybe 2008. And like you said, he had this podcast, and he's interviewing the people that have done it, and he speaks from the heart, speaks from experience, speaks from having invested in I think 250 startups now. And so I've been listening to him for 5 or 6 years, listening to his podcast twice a week pretty much. So I don't know how that's a lot of episodes. Maybe it's I don't know, a lot. And then he wrote a book about angel investing, and that was something I was interested in. So I read his book, and I joined his syndicate, and so it was.
Didn't you guys have some events in Lansing?
I had a startup grind event
Was that was
in
that
Lansing.
was that him? Was that Jason? I can't even say the last name. Jason Kalkanakis.
Nope, he hasn't been out. I haven't had him out here yet. I found out he went to prom out here when I met him a couple weeks ago. So, but
Wait,
I think one day
he went
I
to
think one day
he went
he's
to
going to be out
prom.
here.
He went to what?
To a prom. He went to prom here like
Well, like when he was in high school?
yeah. He was in New York, and
Oh,
so
that's
he was like the
hilarious.
special guest for his prom date to Lansing, Michigan. Because I told him I was like, oh, I'm from Lansing, and he's like, oh, Lansing, where? Oh, I think I was there once. And he told me the story about taking the train from New York over to Lansing, Michigan, to be the special guest at his girlfriend's, or I don't even know if that was a girlfriend, his female friend's prom. And I was trying to think, what a big deal that must have been to have, somebody have an from somebody from the big city from New York come into the high school prom.
And what was the context of you guys? What was the context of you guys meeting?
I'm an investor. I co-invest with him. He wrote that book, and then I wanted to get some diversity outside of crypto, so that in what I consider to be an unlikely event, but possible event, or I don't know if unlikely is the right word, but it,
Wait, so but just like where did you meet, and how did you connect with him?
oh, so he holds these investor events where investors see startups pitch, and they go to make investments in them. And usually I participate in those online, but I was out in San Francisco to meet another guy, or I don't know about meet, but to go to another one of my friends' events from Detroit. And so I met with Jason too.
So you saw him speak, you walked up afterwards, and were like, "Hey, I'm a big fan, and I want to co-invest with you."
Oh, no. I started investing with him last August. And so he's invited me out to San Francisco to participate in these events. And usually I Skype in, but this time I just went in person. And so, just like, I don't know, hanging out at an event, and we just talked.
Okay, just for listeners to get context of like you meeting him, of if you were to sort of make a mental list of all the people you admire in the entrepreneurial world, be it any kind of startup technology otherwise, or blockchain otherwise, where would he sort of collect himself, or who else would you want to meet, or who have you met?
Oh man, well that's hard because him and I are like kind of like colleagues and friends. Although he's way farther in his career than I am, and I'm not super familiar with his startup work because I think he sold his company to AOL in like 2005, and I wasn't really familiar with his work. The guy who I really want to meet, who's on my bucket list, is Elon Musk. I want to meet Elon Musk, and I love what that guy's doing, and I feel like he's like the same thing I was attracted to about crypto. The people who were in crypto, back in 2013, or at least a lot of them, 2011, they're doing it for like making the world a better place. They weren't like, oh, I want to get a Ferrari next week, which I think when you're talking about the price and that the price says something, I think that's a lot what the price says. And the price drops from 20,000 to whatever we're at today, I don't know, 3,800, or I don't whatever we're at, and people are freaking out about it. It's a lot of people that got into like make a lot of money, Or some people are actually like crunched, where maybe they raised money on an ICO or something and they've lost 90% of their capital that they raised last year. And so some people are are in really unfortunate situations. But I think for the most part, the price dropping from 20K to 38K or 3,800, really just people who got in to make money and who weren't in for the love of the game, I guess I'll call it. Which I think is unfair. I think there's probably not a fair statement, but I think that encompasses a wide swath of people. Last November, December, when Bitcoin was doubling in price in a week or two, a lot of people who didn't really know anything about it, bought it kind of like a lottery ticket, I think, that they thought like couldn't lose. And then when the losses came, they hit that sell button.
So this is exactly
there's one other guy I want to talk about. Roger Ver is a guy I love, and I can't put him on the list of people I want to meet because I've met with him a few times. The last time was in Mexico at Anarchapulco. I think it was this year in February, maybe. And he was one of the biggest Bitcoin evangelists. He was called Bitcoin Jesus, Roger Ver, and he's done so much for cryptocurrencies, for Bitcoin, and people hate him now. Probably if you search his name, people are just gonna hate this guy so much. They think he's a scammer and all this stuff. But he had like the worst scam idea ever in history, because I think he got into Bitcoin like in 2010 or 11 or something like that. And he was already a wealthy business owner, and he decided to put into this thing that had no shot of succeeding, and he decided to pour his heart and soul into it, because he believed that it would bring freedom to the world, and he believes freedom is important for people to be their best selves, and to make the world the best place it can be. He thinks freedom, individual freedom is one of the most important things, if not the most important thing.
So you had your man crush with Roger Ver on your libertarian value system, dude. It's funny because I know the CFO, or we had Natalia on the podcast right when I was like beginning to understand this whole world. And so Roger Ver, just to give context, Bitcoin.com is his thing. Bitcoin Cash, he says, is the real Bitcoin. Yep. After I had the CFO on, Natalia Ra, because I was learning, I got accused of getting played by some people. Some listeners on Twitter were like, dude, you just got played by the CFO of Bitcoin Cash, because I didn't know how to ask the right questions to have her explain this whole contrast, So first of all, how are you man, two questions. First of all, how are you staked yourself with Bitcoin Cash versus Bitcoin and Roger Ver's interest there? And then, do you know the story of like what happened in the last couple of weeks? Because I know there was a big, honestly, there was a big thing that happened in the last week or two with Bitcoin Cash, where I kind of honestly was just like, oh man, I don't even know what to keep my eyes on.
So I've been a big blocker ever since the debate first came up. I was shocked the debate even came up. I want to go back to something earlier you said.
Give us the high end view. What does big blocker mean? What does small blocker mean?
Okay, so Bitcoin all throughout its history has just been growing. Well, I don't know about the case now. I don't know about the case the last couple of years, but its usage had been growing. I think about a 2x, two times as much, year over year, since its inception. And there's when you send a message online, whether it's a text message or an email or whatever, it actually takes data to send that, and the longer the message, the more data it takes to send. And with Bitcoin and blockchains, data gets put into blocks. Each transaction has a size, and so the size of the blocks dictates how many transactions you can fit in there, which is how many transactions per unit of time you can do. And so it's a whole bunch of jargon, but pretty much if you think of just water flowing through a pipe, like the bigger the pipe, the more water that can flow through it.
And so the whole debate, so this has to do with the speed of transactions, which people have said Bitcoin is very slow. And so this has to do with the quote what was the original vision or code? And okay, so is that sort of accurate?
Yeah, it has. Yeah, it has a big impact. So this design decision has an impact on everything. The way the whole it's like a foundational decision. It's like, if you make your house's foundation out of cement or wood, those two things are going to have different properties, and so it has ripples all throughout the technology, how you pick this block size. But from my perspective, and I think Roger's perspective, what happened? So the big blocker said we should increase the block size. The blocks are getting full, and when the blocks get full, it makes things slow. It makes transactions slow and expensive. So like one of the things about Bitcoin that I loved was like fast and free. Like email is like fast and free. And my thesis was like, if email cost more than a postage stamp, like you would never use email because it'd be, stupid. And if it was slower, you'd never use it. And I felt the same thing about cryptocurrencies. Like they need to be, fast and free. And then that enables all kinds of amazing things where you can have micro payments online where, you can read a New York Times article and pay them like a tenth of a cent or who knows what, all kinds of paying fractions of cents for who knows Wi-Fi usage at a Starbucks. So it enables all kinds of things when it's like fast and free, and things that are possible when transactions are fast and free. There's some things are possible, and as that expense goes up, eventually nothing's possible. If you take it to, if you have the transaction cost $1 trillion, nobody's going to do anything. So taking it to an extreme, and on the other end of it, when it's free, you can do lots of amazing things.
Fast and free sounds great. How could anybody argue against that?
Right, exactly. Yep. So when I make the argument like that, yeah, how could anybody argue against that? So what the small blockers were saying was like, you can't just increase the size forever because that has implications on the system where it makes it hurts centralization because the blocks can't propagate, and the miners are storing all this data for all these transactions, and people spam the network and things like that. That's the other thing that happens when it's fast and free like email, then you get spam. And so all throughout Bitcoin's history, there's been this discussion of spam transactions, and actually that was a big thing at the end of 2013 where people were putting data into the blockchain. Like nobody was talking about blockchain, I don't think, prior to 2013, as like a thing that is so talked about now in terms of like data storage and supply chain and all this stuff. And right in 2013, they were talking about putting data into transactions. So they wouldn't be financial transactions, but some people thought like, hey, that's spam. Like Bitcoin is not here to store data. It's not a database. And so those are essentially like spam on the network. And other people's perspective was like, hey, if they paid the fee, when I say fast and free, it wasn't really free. I don't know if it was like, a hundredth of a cent or a thousandth of a cent. It was like, it was hard to measure because it was so small.
Well, yeah, we'll give you a pass for the alliteration. Fast and free, fast and free sounds good. But yeah, get the point. Fast and cheap is the point. Okay, I'm confused on a basic point here. Small block, big block. Which one is faster and cheaper? The small blocks, right?
No, the small blocks get slow and expensive because
yeah, okay, go explain.
When you have a small block, it's like thinking about like a small backpack or a big backpack. So if you got a small backpack, you can't fit many books in it, and if you got the big backpack, you can fit a lot of books in it. But if you got the small backpack, it's like.
Well, okay, but the analogy begins to fail when you think of how if you have a backpack the size of a garage, that's not very fast. It's a burden.
Well, the thing about it is it's digital because it's not physical. So from a time in minutes, both are going to be in 10 minutes. So you'd fill up that garage in 10 minutes, or you'd fill up the backpack in 10 minutes.
So as server speeds increase, or server sizes increase, as the pipeline of the internet increases, your giant block size is a preferred, faster, cheaper Bitcoin, and that's what Roger Ver and Bitcoin Cash were doing.
The big blockers were saying, yeah, that it's not a problem to increase the block size now, and there's other ways to make things more efficient. And they were saying, this has been known since Bitcoin's inception, and we are going to scale to I can't remember what the numbers are, tens of thousands of transactions per second or billions of transactions per day. But let's not constrain the growth of the network right now while we work on these perfect solutions. And the small blockers were saying like, no, we can't just keep, like you said, we can't just go from a garage to a bigger garage to a hotel. We can't just keep increasing the block size as demand increases. We need to put a cap on it and make things more efficient.
So without, I'm not sure there's a way to avoid the technicalities or the details, but is this essentially, this is the divorce, this is the essential debate that happened, years ago that's sort of recurring now of like, is that a way to summarize the big blocks versus small blocks, and that's the divide with Bitcoin itself?
That's the divide that resulted in Bitcoin and Bitcoin Cash in, I think it was August of 2017.
And then what happened recently, the last couple of weeks?
Honestly, I didn't follow that one. I have a decent sized stake in Bitcoin Cash, and so there's a split there.
Are you more in Bitcoin Cash or Bitcoin?
I have equal amounts of both. Okay. on a as measured in whatever crypto basis, but in a dollar basis, I don't know what Bitcoin Cash is at, but it's substantially smaller than Bitcoin. And
then what about like if you look at the pie chart of your portfolio, you've got some Ethereum too, and then what else?
Yep. Yeah, I think my holdings probably, if I was to guess, or actually I could look. Bitcoin's going to be number one by quite a bit, and then I'm thinking Ethereum's going to be number two, and then actually I don't think the thing I have tracking my stuff has the Bitcoin Cash split accounted for.
Hey, what do you use, man? Like, are you on Coin? Like, what's your main access point for stuff you own and how you track things?
I track my stuff in CoinCap.
CoinCap, and so you have a sign-in thing where it's not got access to trading, but it's got your kind of like your holdings, or.
Yeah, it's just it doesn't have access to trading or anything. I just put in there, if I bought a Bitcoin, then I just put like one Bitcoin in there, and it's just you literally kind of like a spreadsheet.
You update that. You keep it updated.
No, it updates itself. So it's a mobile app.
So it can like, and where do you do trades? What exchange or what?
I haven't bought in a long time.
You haven't sold in a long time either.
Yeah, I haven't sold. Really, I've never like net sold out of my positions.
Really? When's the last trade you did?
In 2017.
No way.
I think I bought some Ethereum, I bought some Ethereum to buy into an ICO.
Okay, so you are okay. I'm shocked. So 2017, literally the last buy or sell you made was perhaps a year ago of any crypto. Yep. Wait, but you must have bought into some, Monero or Ripple or something new in the last year.
So last year I bought into a couple ICOs. I bought the Simple Token ICO and what's the other one? Civic's ICO. So I bought into those two ICOs, and I didn't want to sell any. I didn't want to lose any of my Bitcoin or Ethereum positions. So what I did was I took cash, wired it over to probably what's the one in New York? The Winklevoss twins, Gemini. I think I wired it over to Gemini and bought over there. Although I could have put it on GDEX, I can't remember, but one of those two.
And do you keep your stuff? Do you keep like the ones that you own? Do you keep sort of on a wallet, like on a hard drive, or do you keep them on an exchange?
No, I don't keep them on an exchange, and I keep them like nice and safe. And people have tried to rob me a few times. And
man, I think this is the episode that my mom and our aunts want. Is the like it was so funny. My mom, people loved the last episode we did where my mom was like, Gabe, I get a credit card statement that says how much I spent, how much I owe every month. Do I get that from Bitcoin? Like the process of saving it to your to your wallet, like it's a huge barrier to entry, and whether it's a positive or a negative, I think people would debate that. But I mean, honestly, this is where you and me, our personalities are probably the polar opposites, where like I've just if I'm going to spend some free time, I'm going to get messy with paints, and you've got your Bitcoin and crypto very organized. And like, I mean, um, do
Well,
you? I mean, well, do you
that
when you go to a conference? Are you in a rare position that you literally have like your stuff in order and you got your crypto saved to hard wallets?
I don't know. I don't really talk to people about like where or how much crypto they have. I just if they say they've got, it's kind of like a binary, like, do you have crypto or not? And when I ask them and they say yes, I don't know if they have $100 worth or $10 million worth, but if I know when they got in, then I'm guessing they, there's some function there, like the longer you've been in, like the
Well,
the more you've got.
how much of that is just your DNA and your upbringing and who you are as a person versus like you told me some stories of getting. I mean, you got hacked multiple times through your cell phone. Like, do you think it's just your experience of like, yo, this is dangerous. You've got to really watch yourself.
Yeah, I think although I am in very risky assets, I think I have a conservative nature, and I don't like to lose money. And so I've been aware of the risks of crypto, and protected myself against those risks. And so they, I got hacked, and they owned my digital identity, but they weren't able to get my crypto. And so it worked as designed, and it's just kind of annoying that
By
that it
the way,
happened.
this is the exact right point to plug Bitcoin Bulls if you want to plug your fund.
Well, yeah, my
Cousin David does not mess around. He's got it tight.
yeah, I don't want to don't want to don't want to lose my money, don't want to go to jail. But going back to your point, I think actually that my nature, I would have had a really hard time with Bitcoin, but I'd been trading public stocks for 11 years before buying any Bitcoin, and that helped me with the volatility. And I don't know how people would do it who have never traded stocks. And if you got into Bitcoin last year and that's your first exposure to it, and you've lost, if you got in at 20K and now it's at 3,800. My hat's off to you if you hung in there, because man, that would have been, even if I would have put like $300 in, and so I don't know if my 300 would be worth like $30 or whatever, $50. I'd be sweating it. I'd be having a hard time sleeping. I'd be like, man, I'm such an idiot. Why did I put into that? And it was only through training and experience that I was able to overcome that natural tendency of me. And going to your point earlier, but about not selling, it's like I've had the same investment thesis since I got into Bitcoin in 2013, that cryptocurrency was going to be, is this emerging industry, and it's going to be in the trillions of dollars of market cap, that it's going to exceed the market value of gold, which is at 8 trillion. And I don't know, cryptocurrencies maybe at, I don't know, 200 or 100 billion today. I think I get a little bit nervous about saying those numbers when I haven't looked at them in a while. And so, like you said, I think it's like a broken record where, if somebody would have called me, anytime between now and 2013, my message would have been essentially, my investment thesis would have been the same, and my message might have just been tweaked, as I try to refine it and like explain what I mean to people, about buying in, being in for the long term, and being willing to withstand the ups and the downs of the market.
It's interesting. I mean, you started out, it sounded like you wanted to be sure you made a point of your own kind of relationship to Bitcoin and cryptocurrency and being more into startups lately. You've been riding this up and down thing for a while, and it probably gets pretty old. Of people being like, "Oh man, see, it's down again." And you're like, "I'm gonna just stop explaining this. Like, you're gonna hold and like, do entrepreneurial things and startups." And I heard it's funny. I'm going to link to this in the show notes, but Andrew Chapin, my partner, sent me a link to a really great presentation by Benedict Evans from A16, from Andreessen Horowitz. Do you follow him, Benedict Evans and Andreessen Horowitz?
I follow their A16Z podcast, and I'm a big fan of Mark Andreessen, who was one of the big supporters of early supporters of Bitcoin.
So it's when I left Hawaii, I did the whole tech thing in the 90s, and in 2001, 2002, I kind of like stepped out of that thing at the dot-com rise. stepped out. I felt like I went into a time machine. 10 years doing art in Hawaii, and when I get back to the Bay Area 2 years ago, I saw Benedict Evans do a talk at a Facebook event. Um, Facebook was doing a startup event, and it's funny, they were very, very monolithic and inaccessible, which is revealing today. But Benedict Evans 2 years ago, he said he said here are the three themes for 2017. It's going to be AI, artificial intelligence. It'll be AR, augmented reality, and it'll be VR, virtual reality. And he was sort of AI is still, I think everybody would say AI is kind of like still this is the thing that is going to be hugely impactful. It's like get into this in this area of the of tech of anything. AI is still a top three thing happening. VR, virtual reality, and AR merge to be mediated reality or just any kind of like augmented reality. And did he miss the blockchain or like it's he has a presentation I'm going to link to called "This is the end of the beginning." So we're at a phase where he's mapping penetration of the internet and kind of like we've reached basically the world the massive up curve the exponential up curve of penetration of the internet is done. It's going to be now it's a slow down it's not the same exponential curve of access to the internet with mobile phones around the world and everything, but it's usability and the depth of access. And so he does mention blockchain, but just from your thoughts around startups, companies you're interested in, what are your thoughts on what are the aspects to pay attention to? Like, would you even put blockchain in the top 5 or top 10 of what's happening with startups?
I think it's going to have a very a binary looking outcome. Like if you get into if you're an entrepreneur and you get into blockchain, you could be like a Coinbase where I don't know what in the past 5 years, what are they at?
But
8
Coinbase
billion
isn't even
in market cap.
But see, we wouldn't even put Coinbase in a blockchain bucket, right? They're an exchange bucket, I guess. But it's like the technology is not blockchain. Like they're not running your the way you log in and buy and sell has got nothing to do with blockchain. It's just you're buying blockchain and
Yeah, I don't think they're. I mean, yeah, I don't. Their product's not a blockchain, but I would definitely put them like in the cryptocurrency industry, and I think Circle. Did they just get bought by somebody? I can't remember. But so I think Cryptsy. I think Circle bought. No, I'm getting these all wrong. Poloniex. But I guess just if you're an entrepreneur and you want to get on a rocket and you want to have like your best possible potential outcome, that rising tide lifts all boats. I think it's clear to me that cryptocurrency is a new technology that's going to be on that up curve, like you were talking about the internet, where today I don't know how many people use crypto on a daily basis, maybe 0 million, maybe 1 million, because there's a lot of people that hold it but they don't actually like use it on a daily basis. Like the last time I used cryptocurrency was it's like a month ago when I sold or sent some Bitcoin Cash at a presentation I gave. But if it hadn't been for that, I wouldn't have used it since 2017 whenever I bought into that ICO. And I think a day is going to come where you're not going to remember the last time it was that you didn't use blockchain. Like today, if you ask somebody when's the last time you didn't use the internet, and they'd have to think about it, and they probably wouldn't be able to remember a time. They might even be like, trekking the Great Wall of China and still using the internet on their phone. And I think Bitcoin's going to get to that place, or not Bitcoin, cryptocurrency, and I guess by.
Well, it's funny because the general term blockchain refers to a specific way of addressing this issue, but the general term or the description is distributed ledger technology, which is a mouthful.
Yeah.
Right? It's like Bitcoin is the Kleenex. That's the way you say the thing is, hey, do you know what I'm saying? Have you heard of Bitcoin? They get, oh, you mean cryptocurrency. Yeah, okay, cryptocurrency. And we're like, oh, but it's more. It's the blockchain. It has a bigger potential impact than just, cryptocurrency. It's the blockchain. And then the deeper layer, it doesn't have to be a blockchain way of doing it. It can be distributed ledger. And this is, like you said, this is stuff that may not mean a damn thing to, anybody, but it's how it works.
Yeah, I think that's something that you said earlier was I think you're talking about when it gets to adoption. Are people going to use it and not even know it? And I think that's the real key is when you send a PayPal transaction or you send a wire over your bank, and underneath the covers it uses blockchain, and you don't even know it. The same way that people today use IPv6 for internet, but they don't know they're using it. But billions of people are using it every day, and I think blockchain will get to that point where it's underlying a lot of things and it's eating a lot of things. Like I don't know how our cell calls work. Maybe they get voice over IP or who knows how things get moved around today. But the digital world is like eating the analog world, and I think we'll see that same thing with blockchain technology. A lot in money, and I think a lot of people like poo-poo money and be like, oh, it's more than just money. But I really think that money might be the most important application of cryptocurrency. And I think there's so much tied to so much that we don't realize, that I didn't realize for a long time, that the fact that our government controls our money, I think I worry that it causes some serious problems. And that was one of the reasons that I got really excited about cryptocurrencies, is to separate out those two things, separation of state and money. And my hope and my wish is that will result in less wars and more sensible policies, more humane policies. I worry about a lot of the financial policies that exist in the U.S. and throughout the world, with governments spending lots of money and printing lots of money. And I hope that if they lose the ability to print money like that with no consequence from cryptocurrencies, it will result in better policies and for the citizens of the world.
This is where probably you and Roger Ver have a great sense of agreement in that polarity. I mean, I think in general, right, like there's probably a great definition of this that I am not aware of in economics, and we have a guest coming up who's an expert in economics. But money is the ability to move things, or to hire people to move things, to create, to build. It's an energy in a sense. So a currency is not just money. The definition of it. Well, I mean, do you have a definition of it that can get us beyond like when I keep saying, hey, it's more than just currency. It's the it's the blockchain. For example, here's the one that I think the killer app. Here's the killer app, man. It's Facebook on the blockchain, so that at any point I can say, oh my God, here's the data you have on me. No, I own that. I'm pulling it all back, but I've got to now pay a subscription fee or something for this social network. I think the backlash right now with Facebook is going to be so huge that there will be a reaction. I think there's an opportunity for the blockchain and distributed ledger technology to become the social network.
Yeah, I think there's all kinds of great things coming. And so on the point about money, though, real quick, I don't have a good definition of it. There's a book on my shelf I haven't read yet called The History of Money, and so I have spent some time thinking about it. But I think it was Warren Buffett had a really great quote about it, where he called it like that money was like chits, where like when you do somebody a favor, they give you this chit, and then you store that, and you can use that in the future. And so another way to might think about that is to like use our energy, either our time or our resources to get more resources, and then money's like a battery where we like store them, kind of in this battery, and we can go use them in the future. I think is a good way to think about it. And the way the government designs money is the batteries aren't good. They're leaky batteries, and they lose their power over time.
I had a political science class in like 1999 at Berkeley where the instructor explained to us why our judgments of a lot of African countries was wrong in terms of expecting our applications of democracy and capitalism to apply, because the value of family was so important. So like right now, you and I have no exchange except that we're family. Right? And so like if I didn't, maybe we would have, but I think there's a real value in the fact that like Aunt Terry's our Saint Aunt, and like I think so. currency is one way of like moving things, but family is also like an influential thing of like access, and your networks, your friends, all these things are aspects of how we kind of move and do things. Um, I guess, I mean, it's funny. I think I'm kind of trying to bring us back to this central theme of you brought up startups in the beginning as opposed to crypto and Bitcoin. We sort of charted your passion and that kind of stuff. I don't know. You think coloring crypto? Do you think that we should be discussing, coloring technology? I mean, is crypto and Bitcoin going to mean anything in a year?
No, man, I think it's great. And actually, I really liked your the way you described it with that gestation period. uh, Initially when I first got into Bitcoin, I was trying to convince everybody like, oh, hey, this thing is great, and like hop in it. And they're like, okay, well, show me. And maybe I could send them, money through email or money through Twitter, Bitcoin through money or through email or through Twitter. But eventually I was like, you know what, it's too early. There's not that killer app, and so I was, I didn't have such a cool name for it, but I think you're right on that it's this gestational period, and it's not for people to start using it today unless there's a real need for it, because the learning curve is so high. But tomorrow the learning curve is going to be lower. Next year the learning curve is going to be way lower. And my I think in 5 or 10 years, there will be no learning curve because it'll just work underneath you. You'll just go sign up on Gabe book, and people won't know it, but under the covers it's using crypto, and they just won't know that. And so there's no learning curve.
I really am a huge fan of the next social network being on a crypto. Can I say crypto database? Is that anything? Crypto database? Is it oxymoron? That's what it is, right?
Yeah, I guess you could say. I think it's the meaning across. I imagine it drives some people crazy.
So I've got on. So, Cousin David, thank you so much for bringing us out of our own break. I've got on two scheduled folks, but lots of guests coming up as we kind of get back into our podcast here. One is a big time investor, access to a lot of capital going all into crypto stuff. Another is a straight a developer in non-fungible ERC 721 tokens, and then kind of everything in between and around that. What are some things that you are curious about, or some questions that you might have for some of our next guests, or who would you suggest we talk to kind of get a sense of what's going on?
I was thinking about that. I think it might, the Coloring Crypto podcast, I think everybody else does want to know, like, how is it impacting people's daily lives? And there are people out there whose lives it does impact. Was it 4 years ago? I was watching like a YouTube series with this guy that was like off the grid, him and his family, and they're growing their chickens and eggs and things like that, and they're bartering, and they were using crypto. Crypto was a big part of that, and that was like 4 years ago. And I bet there's a lot of stories like that, and I think it makes it more interesting, than when I blabber on about theory and blah blah blah. To have a real concrete story of here's how it impacts my life. Here's something I couldn't do before, and crypto lets me do it today. Well, I think those kind of guests might be interesting.
It's a great idea. I mean, but it's so funny. How do you find the tribe in the jungle of technology when as soon as it's technological or digital, it's on the social, it's on the network, and it's exploding to this access point. But yeah, it's a great point. Okay, so this is the journey. So here, as we come out of the break for Coloring Crypto, the intention is if you know somebody in a garage coding something really cool with blockchain, like we're looking for you. Come at us.
Or it might be fun, your dad hasn't been on the cast yet. Maybe go out with your dad and you guys try to buy gas with cryptocurrency. You guys take like $50 worth of Bitcoin and then try to get gas with that.
Dude, well, my dad, I don't know if you're friends with him on Facebook, but he's the biggest Facebook poster I know, and he just declared he's getting off Facebook. I'm like, because he's so mad at them for all their crazy privacy stuff. I'm like, Dad, what are you gonna do? Maybe I should have him on the tail end of this, and I call him right now. Like, what's he gonna do, man? Like, this is a social life. Facebook is his social life, and he's gonna get off Facebook, and I'm not sure where he's gonna go. Hey man, okay, cousin David, thank you so much for being. You are our sort of like our buoy or our kind of mainstay, and we'll bring you back on. And I appreciate you uh, being that for us. Hey, do you want to plug anything? I mean, is there any startups or Bitcoin bulls or anything you want to guide users that people want to get a hold of you or find out
I just
more
want
about
to
you?
plug. I just want to plug crypto in general. If you were excited about it, interested about it before, and you thought 20K was too high, now it's 3,800. A lot of people probably said when it was 20K, like I'm not gonna buy at 20K, but I would have bought at 5K. Well, now it's below 5K. So I think that that's something. I'm not an investment advisor or anything, but I want people to think, make their own decisions. Try out crypto. You can always buy $5 worth, like at Coinbase.com, and you can get an experience, see what it's all about.
Yeah, folks, this is not investment advice, but just the family talking. Coloring Crypto with cousin David. Hey man, thanks so much, brother.
Thanks, Gabe.
Thanks for coming back and staying with us at Coloring Crypto. We're excited to finally be back on the airwaves or the podcast waves. And if you want to participate, those are the two questions that we mentioned earlier that we'd love to have your thoughts on. One, what's taken so long, or why is it taking so long to get that killer app, to get the proof in the pudding, to see the blockchain solutions that can really impact our lives? And then second is, where do you look? What resources do you have to keep an eye on that? Tweet at us at Gabe Colors, GABECOLORS, and subscribe and leave us a review and all that good, juicy podcast stuff. Thanks again, and Happy New Year.
Subscribe now.